Hello, this video walks through the deployment of Spark notebooks from an updated version of a Microsoft Fabric solution that's in a free GitHub repo. The solution gives you an end-to-end example of how Microsoft Fabric can be used for a medallion architecture that imports data, preps it for analytics, and can then be served up in the Fabric warehouse, Power BI, Excel, or other third-party tools. With the new updates, not only is the data volume larger, but the process to go get the source data, prep it, and then serve it up in the gold layer using Spark notebooks has been simplified so that it only takes about 20 minutes or so to import and process the data with an F64 node. And that data is 250 million rows of real CMS Medicare Part D data, so this example is for a large volume of real-world data. My name is Greg Beaumont, and I currently work in Microsoft's healthcare vertical as a technical specialist for data and AI. The GitHub repo was created along with my coworker, Inder Rana. The GitHub repo, which is free to use, is linked in the description below. Here's the repo landing page, where there is also another solution for flattening out over 400 JSON files using Fabric. To navigate to the module for this video, click on Analytics BI Direct Lake Star Schema, and then scroll down to begin the README page. So we originally released this repo last year as a way to get some hands-on experience with Fabric using real-world data. These updates have made it a lot easier to deploy everything, especially the entire process of ingesting the data from CMS, landing it in the bronze layer, cleaning it up, and then serving it up for analytics. At the end of this video, you will have the results of option A, which is data that's ready for a semantic model in Power BI in your gold layer. You don't need to know any code in order to make this happen, and you'll have everything ready to go at that gold layer point within about 20 minutes. There's another option for those of you who come from a SQL background, which uses stored procedures to get data to the gold layer. It's just there to show that there's multiple ways to get things done depending on your skill set, and I'll review that option in another video. First, from a perspective of prerequisites, you have to have a Fabric-enabled workspace. And these notebooks will run with a smaller capacity size, but we used an F64 for most of our testing, and it seemed to perform better than an F2 or an F4. So the first step here in the repo is to create the Lakehouse and set up Spark notebooks. You can click on this link right here. And then we'll want to go ahead and create the Lakehouse and then import the notebooks. So first, let's create that Lakehouse. Back here, you see I have an empty Fabric workspace that I've created and pinned to my F64 node. I'll come down here to the bottom and per the instructions, move to the data engineering view, create a new Lakehouse, and we will name it CMS Lakehouse. Hit create. And just like that, we have a new Lakehouse and OneLake in our newly created Fabric workspace. Moving back to the repo, the 3 notebook files that you'll need to upload to Fabric are also linked from these instructions. I will go ahead and open this in a new tab. If you'd like to preview the Python code that you'll be uploading into your Fabric workspace, you can do that here in GitHub. I'm not going to review what it all does for this video. The notebooks themselves are fairly self-explanatory, and the purpose of this video is showing you how to run everything, not explain all of the code. I'll go ahead and download it. And once you've done that for all 3 of these, you can then move back to the Fabric workspace and per the instructions, upload those notebooks. So first I'll move back to the workspace and go back to my data engineering view. And up here in the upper right, you can see we have an option to import notebook. And I will upload all 3 of those notebooks. Hit open. And then you'll see that all 3 of them are being imported. And at this point, we can go back to the workspace view and see that they've been added. This one has a 1 after it just because I've downloaded it a few times. But your first time through this, it should just come up with the name as it appears in the documentation. Let's go ahead and open up that first notebook. Per the instructions, remove all lakehouses and then add the lakehouse you just created. And you can see I've been testing this a few times, but we are in the workspace CMS Video Fabric demo. Now let's do the same thing for the other two notebooks. Remove all lakehouses. Add our lakehouse. And for the third notebook. Now let's go back to the repos instructions. And scrolling down, you'll see that we now go back to the main README page, at which point we will go down to step 2. And for step 2, we do have two methods. As I mentioned above, there's option A and option B. Method A is using a single pipeline with Spark notebooks to do everything. And method B is using a pipeline to bring the data in and populate the silver layer, and then using SQL stored procedures in the Fabric warehouse in order to build out the dimensional and reporting model. We wanted to give both examples to show that depending on how you prefer to write code and orchestrate workloads, there's different options in Fabric. For this video, we'll be showing that method A. Let's go ahead and click on that link. Now we'll go ahead and open that first notebook and then create a new pipeline. And when we do that, we'll name it CMS Data Pipeline. So I will open up that first notebook per the instructions. Add to pipeline, new pipeline. Give it a name. Hit create. And you'll see we have a default activity for a notebook. Let's move back to the instructions. You can see that we first name the notebook activity. Then we can add some additional notebook activities in order to sequentially run these notebooks one after the other. So I'll go back to the Fabric workspace. You can see this notebook. Let's go ahead and follow the instructions and name the first one Download CMS Data. And in the settings, you'll see that it already mapped to that first notebook since we opened up this pipeline from that artifact. Let's add another notebook. And this second one we'll call Create CMS Data Table. Under Settings, this is notebook number 2. And let's add one more. This last one will be named Create CMS Star Schema Tables. Select that third notebook. Now, per the instructions, we will drag the on-success indicator from the first to the second to the third notebook activities, and then save the pipeline. And then we'll go ahead and run it. Hit save. And now we're ready to go ahead and run that pipeline. You'll see down at the bottom that the first notebook is now in progress, and it will iteratively run through all three, and then the pipeline will be complete. Here I'm temporarily unpausing the recording. You can see that the first step has completed. It's succeeded. And the second step of creating the CMS data table, that notebook is now running. And unpausing the recording again, it looks like everything ran in less than 18 minutes. So this first step went and got the data from CMS and brought it into the bronze layer. This second step took the data from the bronze layer and combined it into a single flattened table. And this third step then turned that big table into a relational star schema design that's optimized for reporting. If I were to go back to the Git repo page, and let's go ahead and return to the main page, you'll see that all of this happened in less than 18 minutes, and it brought in, cleaned up, and organized almost 250 million rows of data. Let's go back to Fabric. And within the workspace, let's open up that Lakehouse that we created. And let's expand the tables. And you'll see we now have all 4 dimensions with the star schema version of the fact table, along with the flattened out version of all years of data. So 250 million rows of data in this table. And you can take a look at the preview to make sure everything populated as planned. And if I go ahead and expand the files here in the Lakehouse, hit refresh, you'll also see the CSV files that were brought over from CMS, and you can validate that each of those looks to be about the appropriate size. Again, this video reviewed the process by which to pull in 250 million rows of real CMS data from CMS into Azure, drop it into the bronze Lakehouse within Fabric, clean it up and combine it into the silver layer, and then use a Spark notebook in order to create an optimized reporting version of the database. And again, it all ran in under 18 minutes. At this point, you'd be moving down to step 3 to create the Direct Lake Power BI star schema. And then we have a PBIX file that you can connect to that star schema. At some point in the future, we will also automate step 3 to make it a little bit easier and less manual. But once you get the hang of it, you should be able to deploy this whole thing in about an hour or less, including the scripts and then the manual steps to create that star schema semantic model. If you could like this video and follow the channel, it would be greatly appreciated. And questions and comments are welcome below.